So I'm Liam Blake. I'm 23, and I'm a rapper and producer. Um, I do a lot of work as well with the charity Sound Skills, where I work as a sole practitioner. But I do a lot of work with young people, trying to help them learn how to make music and find themselves and become who they're meant to be. Well, the scene I focus in is urban music, so you're talking about like rap, grime, I suppose drill, but that's not necessarily something I do personally. We've got quite a good scene in Preston. There's lots of different artists around who are making really good, high quality products. But a lot of the time within our scene, there's a lot of turmoil, so it leads to a lot of disconnection. So you have like factions, so to speak. So you have certain groups who all move together. But yeah, so it's an urban scene, but I think in Preston it's going pretty well at the moment. Specifically in Preston, I think the first urban stuff I really heard was like Triple C, CCY. There were so many different groups. Even back then, it was sort of faction, but that was like way back in 2006. They're the sort of people who I grew up listening to. So I would have only been 7 or 8 at the time. So you have people like Montana, Chambor, and Millie, and Majestic Militants. So many different guys who are still going today. You know, they're still really striving to push the scene and bring in new people. 100%. I think everybody in the back of the heads wants a cohesive scene where everybody gets along and everybody can work together and push us forward. I think the issue comes with, I guess a part of it is the genre, because it is such a divisive genre. It can end up causing rifts between people because it's so competitive. It's kind of like a sport. So, unlike singing, where it's all about, pitch and melodies and how well you can sing, rapping it's about words and how well you can use your vocabulary, and a lot of that is it's kind of like a battle. There's a big rap battle scene, and it's because everyone wants to prove that they're the best. And as much as you want to help your fellow artist, you want to be the best guy. And because it is a music that comes from the, you could say, lower class areas, the places with less money, where people really want to prove themselves and make a difference to their own lives, it can cause people to become quite jealous in a lot of ways. Yeah, so everyone wants everyone to be successful, but I think there can be issues where everyone also wants themselves to be successful specifically. They want to be the guy, whereas I don't think anyone's really happy with the idea of being the group. If you look at like London or even Birmingham, they have very specific sets of people who have all come up together. So specifically in London, in the birth of grime, there was people like Skepta, Giggs, Wiley, Ghetto. They all came from the same English class in school. They all had the same teacher, and there was a group of friends who, although they wanted to prove that they were the best, I think overall they wanted everyone to be successful. Whereas nowadays, I think it's the opposite. People think of themselves first and then think of the overall picture secondary. And I think until Preston's able to cement itself as a big scene, it'll never be able to break out and become a commercial success. It's a funny one talking about Blackpool because their scene is different in the sense of, I think it lacks longevity. You have to admire the amount of success they've been able to have from the small amount of product that they've put out, but there's an argument to say that it's not from positive praise. And they are young kids, and they've certainly got a certain ability. And I think if they was able to harness that and really focus on like what sort of lyrics they want to portray, and realize that when you put yourself on a platform, you could potentially be speaking to possibly millions of people. and the words that you say are impacting, irregardless of your stature when you wrote those lyrics or when you put those out. So you know, Blackpool is a great example of success from a gimmick. In essence, it has to be said that, you know, they are young, and it's not. I don't think it's their fault. I don't think they went out to be seen as, you know, the Blackpool grime kids. Let's watch their videos and have a bit of a giggle, because I think that's what a lot of it was with especially with the really young ones like Little T. Well, I think the perfect mixture is just moving away from the idea of being the best in Preston to being, to, rather than an individual being the best in their city, making their city the best. And if you can make Preston well known for its music, people will gravitate to all the artists. And then once you've got that acclaim and you've got those eyes watching you, then that's the time that you can prove that you're the best, because you've already got the audience. But at the moment, I think a lot of the audience are the rappers themselves. You see it in a lot of shows where, especially when it's put on by the artists or by promoters who are close to the rap artists, you go there and sometimes you're just rapping to other rappers. And until you can draw in an audience, I mean, you can prove you're the best to the other rappers, but until public, the people who aren't involved, see that, I don't think the like, for me, if I was to feel I was the best in the city at the moment, it wouldn't mean that much, because I'd just be the best to the other rappers. Whereas actual people, the regular people who actually listen to music on a regular basis, don't listen, and it's until you get their ears that it doesn't hold weight, I don't think. I definitely think if radio was to embrace the local scene more, Rock FM, I know City Beat does some stuff, but I think that could be expanded on as well. BBC Radio Lancashire, I know they do a lot of stuff with bands and things like that, but allowing more underground urban artists on, that could really help develop a scene. And I think even online publications, allowing a forum for artists to express their character, not just their musical ability, because that's a massive part of somebody's brand and the appeal. It's not always they just like the music, it's they like the person. I think Big Nasty, who does a lot on TV now, he's a brilliant example of that, where I personally think his music isn't the best music in the world. It's certainly not blowing anybody's socks off. That's not to discredit him, but he's such a great person, and people love to watch him, and people love his character and what he's about, so they go and check him out. And I think if there were more platforms that allowed these artists to actually show who they are and get away from, because a lot of rappers are just labelled as they're either thugs or the wannabes, or you know, there's even still a stigma about white artists, white rappers, I would say. So allowing them a platform to break away from that could certainly help as well. So going back to the history of the urban scene, there's been a number of people that have tried to bring in and create like a sustainable platform for people. So it started out with like Triple C, and they started out with just camera phones and video recorders, and they do what if you watched them now, you'd say, oh, that's low quality. At the time, it weren't necessarily so bad, but you know, it was the best they could do on a budget, and that's certainly developed. So there's been a number of people who have tried to create these online platforms a bit like SBTV. So started with Triple C, then a guy called DY Media came along, and he did a phenomenal job. So I would say he had the most sustainable platform around, with a couple of million views. He had thousands of subscribers. I would say probably hundreds of artists locally who would come to him, and he was the primary place to have videos done. So you could do like freestyle videos where you just rap to a camera. You can get like a full music video done. He did like vlog type things. He did videos in other countries. He really expanded the medium. Media channels like that have certainly helped in a lot of different ways, and there's been quite a few. So I was involved with FMTV. There's been FUTV, TMTV. They're doing really good things at the moment. Nate Visuals, he does phenomenal videos, and we're actually about to see the return of DY Media, which will be super duper interesting. And that's probably the best way we've done it so far to create a cohesive scene. Is these media channels. There have been platforms like Shotta TV who did things like rap battles, but they mainly allowed access to shows for these artists. But again,
So that was based around a venue as well.
yeah. So Shotta TV was another video platform. They film stuff for people. They put it up, but as I said, they host events. So they would allow rappers to put the name forward. They put on an event at a place like Tonic in town near the bus station. They'd have some great acts come down. One of the ones I actually did had Scorpio from Grandmaster Flash in the Furious Five. Such a legendary act. And I had the opportunity to open for such a legendary act because of Shotta TV. That would have never happened for me otherwise, especially not at that time. I think the issue is there's a lot of personalities. There's a lot of people, and as I was mentioning before, a lot of people who want to be seen as the man, and it causes a lot of tension because, especially for someone who's like say filming videos for people, let's say you have 50 people hypothetically that you film videos for, say over the course of a year, but out of those 50 people they might want 5 videos each. That's a lot of videos to shoot for one person, and you get to a point where you don't have the time to film videos for everybody, and you have to prioritize your time. So you might prioritize it with the people who get the most views, which then leaves the people who don't get as many views alienated, and they start to feel bitter, and they start to have this idea that you're pushing them away personally, and it's not necessarily like that. I think a lot of these people who are behind the camera don't really affiliate themselves too much personally, and they more just go with what's most efficient for the time, because they are so limited. And that's kind of one of the issues, is some people aren't happy to go the extra mile, so they do extreme things to try and give themselves the edge, like say try and intimidate a cameraman. So when they say they can't shoot a video, send them really nasty messages, or threaten to come to the house, or ring up the phone and prank call them. These are all things that have happened to multiple channels within Preston, from stories that I've heard. Same things happened with the artists. So let's say you're coming into the scene and you start getting pally with some other local artists who are already in a group, and then you do something that does really well and you decide to move on from that group because it's the natural progression for yourself. It's super easy for that group then to be like, well, as soon as he did something he left, so he's the enemy now because he's not trying to give us what he made himself. So it is a very combative profession, hobby, whatever you want to call it. There's tons of people who have said stuff in a song. So you might say a line that is taken the wrong way, and instead of that just being a non-issue, that can become something massive. This is a genre where you say the wrong thing to the wrong person and it might not just be a war of words. I think people need to understand that to make this successful, you have to be professional. And being professional is about playing the game, so allowing things to get to a certain point so it can expand, so it can get bigger. Because controversy is a massive driver. It's a massive way to promote something. And I certainly don't agree with people who fabricate it. But I think you should always have it in the back of your head that as a musician, as an artist, as somebody in the music scene, these are people you're going to bump into. The people who aren't like that need to stand up and say something and make the difference. I think one thing that a lot of local artists don't have is an actual person who knows the business, who knows what is going to be good for you and what's going to be bad for you, and somebody who's not just going to tell you yes every time you ask them a question. Somebody who's going to be honest with you and pull you back when you need pulling back. We don't have that, so it's super easy for you might just post something on Facebook, somebody comments on it with the wrong thing, and you get upset, and then maybe you make a song, then they make a song, and then they say something in their song that upsets you even more, and then next thing you're in a car going to somebody else, and it's that easy to get blown out of proportion. And I think what a lot of, not just artists, anybody who's involved with rap, grime, drill, all those things needs to remember is if you're gonna ever be successful, not having a criminal record is a pretty good start, because there are some organisations that won't touch you if you do. Um, being restrained in to a certain degree is beneficial for a big business. They don't want someone that's gonna go crazy every time something bad happens. They don't want someone that any second could blow up, end up in jail, end up doing something really regrettable, getting themselves hurt, or being in a predicament where they're no longer marketable. So you have to think to the future, because that argument, it may get you views, it may get you attention at the time, but you've got to think forwards and you've got to think into the future. Talking about venues and promoters and managers, they're not going to want to be involved if they think you're going to bring trouble to their venue, or they're going to be, a manager might not touch you if they think you're just going to be hard work continuously. If you can't be spoken to, if you can't be persuaded, you have to have a certain level of leniency to be in the scene. You can't take everything to heart, can you? It's super rare that you have anybody outside of the scene help within the scene. Um, I personally, as you know, I've had a lot of help directly from small charities like Sound Skills, the venue in Penwitham. I've done some recording stuff there. I started out with a laptop that my friend borrowed off his mum and a microphone that the little set up in Mooney Community Centre. But I think there certainly needs to be a push from an authority standpoint on giving platforms to young people to be creative, not just in urban music but music in general, the arts, film, photography, acting, dance. All the arts need to have an overhaul and really be pushed, because in the darkest times, that's what we are pushed towards. All the other stuff it becomes so droll, and like working a 9 to 5 job, it can be so repetitive and mind numbing, and sometimes you need that little something, that little spark, being able to pick up a guitar and play it because you got taught to do it as a child. It's a tough one because it's something that I've pondered a lot. It's something that I think about quite a lot. What could I have done differently, or what could have I have had in place, or what help could I have had that would have propelled me forwards? I think personally, just specific to me, that someone with real business acumen in the field, because as mentioned before, I think that's one thing that is lacking within the scene. Not just necessarily in my genre, but I think in quite a lot of genres, because there are a number of studios, fluctuating in prices. The modern day, home studios, you can get a certain degree of quality from as well. So having access to recording isn't as difficult as it maybe once was. Well, I would have loved to have known things like branding, marketing, ways to be able to sell myself, and not just to look at music as a hobby or something that was a pipe dream, but something that was a business. Because I think as soon as you start looking at your art as a business, it then can become something that has monetary value. Whereas for a super long time, and maybe it's a product of my genre, and I think a lot of genres have this kind of stigma of, if you're doing it for money, it's a bad thing. Whereas I can guarantee you, anybody who is successful made that decision that they were going to do it for money, because it's the only way to make it sustainable in a lot of ways. As mentioned, just somebody to say to me no, just somebody who could have sat me down and gone, right, you possibly have something that you can work towards, but that's not it yet. Just give it time, make some more stuff. We'll come back to it. We'll keep revisiting it. Because I personally think I started releasing music too early. I don't think I was developed enough. I don't think I was ready for the public to see my stuff. And I certainly think that left me in a position where a lot of people had heard me, but not the me that I wanted them to hear. And I think I lost a lot of those people, maybe forever. Who knows? Sometimes the first impression is the only impression. Generationally, it'll probably come when some of these older people who have been doing it for quite a long time, 10 plus years, decide that they're not really looking to do more music. Maybe they will be the ones that can offer that, because they have had the experience, and maybe it is a case of there just hasn't been enough time for that type of person to come around yet. That would be my hope, that that's the case. Or just a music business school, because I think although you would market rap slightly different to how you would market, say, an indie band, I think the general idea of what you need to do is the same for any musician. It's just a different, coat of paint, so to speak.